My name is Haley Morris. I'm 32 years old, a construction engineer, and a mother who once believed that losing my husband was the worst pain I would ever endure. I was wrong. 2 years ago, my entire world collapsed in a single phone call. That morning had started like any other. Daniel kissed my forehead in the kitchen while I was checking emails for a project site inspection. "Don't work too hard, Hales," he teased, grabbing the car keys. "Violet and I will bring you back something from the trip." It was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway, just father and daughter time. I remember waving from the doorway as Violet giggled in the passenger seat, her hair tied in two messy braids. If I had known it would be the last time I'd see Daniel alive, I would have held that moment longer. The truck lost control on the highway. The officer's voice over the phone was calm, almost rehearsed. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your husband didn't survive." I don't remember how I got to the hospital. I only remember the smell of antiseptic and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Violet was alive. Burns along her neck, a long scar carved down her left cheek, tiny hands trembling under hospital sheets. Daniel was gone. That accident didn't just take my husband, it left my daughter marked, physically and emotionally. Every night after that, when Violet finally fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. What if I had gone instead? What if I had insisted he stay home? What if I could trade places? But guilt doesn't bring people back. Daniel's parents never once blamed me. Even in their grief, they wrapped Violet in warmth. My mother-in-law would sit beside Violet, gently tracing the burn marks on her neck without flinching. One evening, I watched her press a kiss against the scar on Violet's cheek. No hesitation, no pity. Just love. I cried silently in the hallway that night. For the first time since the accident, I felt like my daughter was safe in someone's hands. I wish I could say the same about my own mother. Lillian Morris has always cared about appearances. Perfect table settings, perfect Christmas cards, perfect grandchildren. At first, I thought her distance was grief. But then I started noticing things. The hesitation before hugging Violet, the way her eyes lingered too long on the scar, the forced smile. One afternoon, Violet ran toward her with open arms. "Grandma!" My mother paused, just for a second. But that second was enough. When she finally patted Violet's head, it felt mechanical, obligatory, like she was touching something fragile, or worse, something embarrassing. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself grief changes people. But deep down, something cold began to settle in my chest. Because this wasn't sorrow. It was discomfort. And I was starting to realize that to my mother, my daughter's scars weren't a reminder of survival. They were a stain on her perfect picture, and that realization would soon tear my family apart. For a while, I tried to manage it quietly. I stopped pushing Violet toward my mother's arms. I stopped expecting warm smiles. I stopped asking myself why, because every time I did, I felt my stomach twist with an answer I didn't want to admit. But Violet didn't stop hoping. Kids don't, not until the world teaches them to. One night, after dinner at my mom's place, I was rinsing plates in the sink while Violet sat at the table, spinning a pencil between her fingers. She wasn't drawing. She wasn't humming. She was just watching me. That kind of silence from a child is never empty. It's heavy. Finally, she spoke soft and careful. "Mom!" I turned. "Yeah, baby?" She hesitated, eyes flicking to the living room, where my mother sat scrolling through her phone like nothing in the world could touch her. "Why doesn't Grandma ever take pictures with me?" My hands froze under the running water. A plate slipped slightly in my grip, porcelain clicking against the sink. Violet wasn't angry. She wasn't whining. She asked like she truly believed there had to be a reasonable explanation, like maybe Grandma was just busy, like maybe she forgot. Like maybe Violet was still lovable enough that this could all be a misunderstanding. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because what do you say? Your grandmother thinks your face ruins the family image? She's ashamed of you? I shut the tap off slowly, as if moving too fast would break me. Then I walked over, crouched beside her chair, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, careful not to make the scar feel like the center of my attention. "Grandma has her way of loving," I said, forcing my voice steady. Violet nodded, staring down at the pencil again, but the way her small fingers tightened around it made something inside me burn. She understood. Maybe not fully, but enough. And that night, after she fell asleep, I stood in the doorway of her room and watched her chest rise and fall. I promised myself something. Quietly, like a vow you don't even trust the universe to hear. No one will make you feel like you're less, not while I'm breathing. I tried to talk to my mother the next time we visited. I waited until Violet was in the backyard with my brother's boys. Their laughter drifted through the window, bright and normal, like life hadn't shifted on its axis for us. My mother was wiping down the kitchen counter, slow and methodical. "Mom," I said, "can we talk?" She didn't look up. "About what?" About Violet. That got her attention, just a flicker of annoyance, like I'd said the word problem instead of my daughter's name. I stepped closer. Please don't look at her like she's a burden. My mother sighed, finally turning to face me. Her lips pressed into that familiar line she used whenever she thought she was the only adult in the room. Haley, she said, like she was being patient with a child, I'm not treating her like a burden. I swallowed. Then why do you act like touching her hurts you? Her eyes narrowed. You're being dramatic. I almost laughed. Because if I didn't, I might have screamed. Dramatic? My voice dropped. She notices, Mom. She asked me why you won't take pictures with her. My mother's expression didn't soften. It didn't crack. It didn't show guilt. It showed calculation. Maybe, she said slowly, it's for the best. That sentence hit me so hard it felt like stepping into cold water. For the best, I repeated. She tilted her head as if she didn't understand why I wasn't grateful. You know, children can be cruel. People can be cruel. You should be thinking about her future. And then, like she'd been waiting for the moment, like she'd practiced the words in front of a mirror, she said it. Have you ever thought about getting Violet plastic surgery? I stared at her. My ears rang. What? I whispered, because my brain refused to accept what it heard. My mother's voice stayed calm. Technology is advanced now. You could fix the scar, improve her appearance. It would help her. It would help everyone. Help everyone. Not Violet. Everyone. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my fingers hurt. Mom, I said, each word measured, controlled, dangerous. She is 10 years old. My mother shrugged. And she'll be older tomorrow. I leaned forward. I will never teach my daughter that she needs to change her face to be loved. My mother's eyes flicked away. I'm thinking realistically. No, I snapped. You're thinking selfishly. She stiffened, offended now. Now she felt something. I lowered my voice. If you genuinely cared about Violet's future, you'd love her as she is. My mother went back to wiping the counter, like the conversation was just dust she could remove. We'll see, she said. Those two words, we'll see, were the moment I realized something terrifying. My mother didn't believe she was wrong. She believed time would make me agree with her. A few months later, she called me for dinner. Her tone on the phone was unusually gentle, almost sweet. That alone made my stomach knot. Daniel's parents were visiting that day and had taken Violet to the park, so I decided to go alone. I told myself it was good. Maybe, without Violet there, my mother would finally talk like a human being again. The moment I stepped into the house, I knew something was off. No questions about Violet. No, how's she doing? Nothing. My mother poured me water and sat down like she was preparing for a business meeting. Haley, she began, calm and composed, I need to talk to you about something. I crossed my arms, bracing. Okay. She inhaled slowly. I think it would be best if you stopped bringing Violet to family gatherings. For a second, I didn't breathe. Then I slammed the glass down so hard, water spilled over the edge. What the hell are you talking about? My mother's face tightened, as if I had embarrassed her, like I'd broken etiquette, not my daughter's heart. It's not that I don't love her, she said, the lie smooth as polished stone. But you must understand, those scars. Other children might get scared. And people talk. We have to think about the family's reputation. My vision blurred, not from tears, from rage. And then, from the living room doorway, my brother Dylan chimed in, nodding like this was all perfectly reasonable. Come on, Haley, he said, sighing. You're making it a bigger deal than it is. The other kids could get teased if they're seen with her. I turned to him slowly. Seen with her, I repeated. Like Violet was something contagious. Like my daughter's survival was a stain. My voice dropped, ice cold. Do you know what Daniel's parents did when they saw her scars? My mother looked away. I didn't let her escape. They touched them, I said, each word a blade. They kissed them. They didn't flinch. They didn't avoid her. They didn't treat her like a disgrace. I swung my gaze to Dylan. And you, I said quietly, have you ever looked Violet in the eyes? Or is she just a problem you want hidden so your life stays comfortable? Silence. No apology. No shame. Just the quiet hum of my mother's perfect kitchen, as if cruelty could be served with dinner. I stood up so fast the chair scraped hard against the floor. Violet lost her father, I said, voice shaking now. And now her own blood wants to throw her away because of a few scars. My mother's mouth tightened. Dylan rolled his eyes. That was it. That was the final proof I needed. I leaned forward, hands pressed against the table, and stared my mother down. If this is how this family treats Violet, I said, then don't expect to see either of us again. And I meant it. For 2 months, I didn't go back. I threw myself into work, into routine, into motherhood, like it was a shield. We baked together. We watched movies. We did homework late into the night. And slowly, Violet's laughter started coming back. The scars stayed. But the wounds in her heart, they began to heal. Still, sometimes, when the house was quiet, she would crawl onto the couch beside me, her head resting against my shoulder, like she was afraid I might disappear too. "Mom," she whispered one evening, barely audible, "do you think Grandma misses me?" That question cut deeper than any insult my mother had ever thrown. I pulled her into my arms and kissed the top of her head. "Of course she does, sweetheart," I lied softly. But inside, I wondered if my mother even remembered what love was, when it didn't come with conditions. 2 days before Christmas, my phone rang. The screen lit up with a name I didn't expect to see again. "Mom," I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was soft, too soft. "Haley," she said gently, "I'm hosting a cozy little Christmas dinner this year, just for adults. I'm sorry about everything before. Would you like to come?" My grip tightened around the phone. The question wasn't really an invitation. It was a test. I swallowed hard. "You mean, you want me to leave Violet at home and spend Christmas without her?" A pause. Then the sigh, like I was exhausting her. "Everyone's leaving their kids at home this year," she said. "Just adults. To keep the atmosphere light. You understand, don't you?" My heart started pounding. Not from sadness. From the slow realization that my mother hadn't changed at all. And whatever she was planning for Christmas, Violet was still not invited into it. I didn't answer my mother right away. Instead, I stared out the window at the snow beginning to fall, soft and quiet, like the world was trying to look innocent. "I won't attend any celebration where my daughter isn't welcome," I said finally, calm, clear. Her sigh came sharper this time. "Haley, you've always been so stubborn." "No," I replied evenly. "I've always been a mother." There was silence on the other end. Then the line went dead. She didn't argue. She didn't try to fix it. She didn't ask about Violet. That told me everything. Christmas Day came colder than usual. At exactly 5 o'clock in the evening, I drove Violet to Daniel's parents' house first. My father-in-law had called the night before, voice warm and sincere. "Haley, we'd love to have you both. The house won't feel right without Violet's laugh." That's what family sounds like. But on the way there, a thought wouldn't leave me alone. My mother said it was adults only, but I didn't trust her anymore. So I pulled the car into my mother's driveway. "Mommy's just going inside for 5 minutes, okay?" I said gently. "I'll be right back." Violet nodded, smiling sweetly, trusting me the way only a child can. I stepped out into the snow, and then I froze. Through the living room window, golden lights shimmered against the Christmas tree. Presents stacked high, music drifting softly, and children. Not just Dylan's boys, Miles and Nolan, but younger cousins too. Laughter, wrapping paper tearing, tiny feet running across hardwood floors. It wasn't an adults-only dinner. It was Christmas. For everyone, except my daughter. The cold in my chest turned into something sharper, something steady. I walked to the front door and opened it without knocking. The room buzzed with warmth and noise until it didn't. My voice cut through the air like glass. "You told me this was adults only." Every head turned. My mother stood near the fireplace, wine glass in hand. For a split second I saw it, the panic flickering behind her perfect expression. "Haley," she whispered, "don't cause a scene." I laughed. Not loud, not dramatic, just empty. "Don't cause a scene," I repeated softly. "Then explain this." I gestured around the room, at the children, at the lies. Silence swallowed the music. I scanned the faces. Uncles, aunts, cousins, people who had watched Violet grow up, who had seen her before the accident. "Did all of you know?" I asked, louder now. "Did everyone here know my mother told me my daughter wasn't welcome at Christmas?" The laughter from the kids faded into confusion. My mother straightened her blouse, regaining composure. "It wasn't like that," she said. "I just thought—" "You thought what?" I cut in. Her jaw tightened. "I thought it would be better," she said carefully. "You know how children are. And those scars." There it was again. She exhaled. "They're unpleasant." The word echoed in the room like a gunshot. Unpleasant. My daughter's survival was unpleasant. For a moment, I couldn't feel my hands. Before I could speak, a chair scraped loudly against the floor. Aunt Carol stood up. "Lillian, what is wrong with you?" she snapped. "Violet is your granddaughter." My mother's voice grew sharper, defensive. "Carol, this doesn't concern you." "Oh, it absolutely does," Aunt Carol fired back. "You lied. You excluded a child from Christmas because you're worried about appearances?" Across the room, Dylan rolled his eyes. "Haley, do you have to ruin the whole night?" he muttered. "It's Christmas." I turned to him slowly. "No," I said. "Mom ruined this family." I let my voice lower, not yelling now, just steady. "She pushed Violet and me out. I didn't walk away. She made that choice when she decided an innocent child didn't deserve to be part of this family." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Control was slipping. I saw it. And just as I was about to say more, The front door creaked open behind me. I turned. Violet stood there, her small boots dusted with snow, her big eyes scanning the room. She must have waited too long in the car. "Mommy," she whispered. The air left my lungs. Everything else disappeared. I walked straight to her, kneeling down, pulling her into my arms before she could look at anyone else too closely. "I'm here, baby," I murmured into her hair. "It's okay, let's go." She clung to me, voice trembling. "What's happening?" I didn't answer, because there was no explanation that wouldn't shatter her. I stood holding her hand and faced my mother one last time. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "This will be the last time I step foot in this house," I said. "You erased Violet from this family." I paused. "So now I'm erasing you from ours." Gasps rippled through the room. Some looked ashamed, some angry, some stunned. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out with my daughter. Snow crunched under my boots as I reached the car. Violet's fingers tightened around mine. I helped her into the seat, buckled her in carefully, brushing a stray tear from her cheek. "I'm sorry you had to see that," I whispered. She nodded, but her eyes looked older than 10. Just as I started the engine, the front door behind us burst open. Footsteps pounded through the snow. "Haley, wait!" I didn't turn off the car. Aunt Carol reached us first, breath visible in the cold air. "I'm so sorry," she said, eyes filled with fury, but not at me. I didn't know she would go this far. Behind her, a few other relatives stood awkwardly. "We didn't know she told you adults only," someone muttered. "We can't stand by and accept this," another voice said. "If she can do that to Violet—" Their words blurred, because apologies now felt weightless. I glanced at Violet in the rearview mirror. She wasn't crying. She was watching, learning, and I realized something in that moment. It didn't matter who suddenly grew a conscience. The damage had already been done. Without another word, I pressed the gas pedal. The house shrank in the mirror. My mother stood in the doorway, small and rigid against the glow of Christmas lights. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel afraid of losing her. I felt free. The drive to Daniel's parents' house felt longer than it actually was. Snow blurred the windshield, and the silence inside the car pressed gently against my ears. Violet sat in the back, staring out at the white fields passing by. She wasn't crying. That hurt more. When we finally pulled into the driveway, I saw them waiting. Daniel's parents stood by the gate, bundled in coats, faces glowing under the porch light. They had been watching for us, waiting. The second I opened Violet's door, she ran. "Grandma! Grandpa!" My mother-in-law dropped to her knees and wrapped Violet in the tightest embrace, like she was holding something precious and breakable at the same time. "My sweet girl," she whispered into her hair. "You're freezing." My father-in-law rested a gentle hand on Violet's head. "What happened tonight?" I saw Violet inhale, ready to speak, her lips parted. Before she could, I lightly touched her shoulder and shook my head. "Not tonight," I said softly. She frowned slightly. "But Mommy—" "I know," I murmured. "They deserve to know. But tonight isn't for people who didn't choose us." I swallowed. Tonight is for the ones who did. Violet blinked, then slowly nodded. And just like that, the tension of the evening began to dissolve. Inside, the house was warm. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled the air. Golden lights wrapped around the tree. Laughter echoed from the kitchen. No one stared at Violet. No one hesitated before hugging her. No one flinched. She helped her grandmother arrange cookies on a plate, her scar catching the soft glow of the lights. And for the first time that night, I saw her smile without restraint. I stood back and watched. That's when I understood something clearly. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who reaches for you without hesitation. The next morning, I was in the kitchen making pancakes when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, my mother stood there. Dylan stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets, jaw tight. The cold air slipped inside, but I didn't move to let them in. My mother looked smaller, tired, but pride still clung to her like perfume. "Haley," she began softly, "I want to see Violet. I want to apologize." I stared at her, not angry, not shaking, just still. She stepped forward slightly. "I was wrong." Dylan exhaled impatiently. "Look, it got out of hand. Everyone's talking about it. Mom didn't mean—" I held up a hand. "Stop." Silence fell between us. "You didn't mean what?" I asked quietly. "To call my daughter unpleasant?" My mother's face flinched at hearing her own words repeated back. "I was concerned about her future," she insisted weakly. "You know how society is." I crossed my arms. "No," I said calmly. "You were concerned about your image." Her eyes widened slightly. You didn't want her in photos. You didn't want her at dinner. You didn't want her under your Christmas tree." Each sentence landed heavier than the last. Dylan shifted uncomfortably. "Haley, don't drag this out. She's here, isn't she?" I looked at my brother, the man who had watched it all unfold and chosen comfort over courage. There is nothing to drag out, I replied. Mom made her choice. My mother's voice cracked for the first time. She's my granddaughter. I tilted my head. Then why did you treat her like she wasn't? That question hung between us, unanswered. Because there was no excuse left to hide behind. I took a slow breath. You think a simple apology fixes this? I asked quietly. Do you think Violet will forget standing in that doorway while everyone stared? My mother's lips trembled. I was wrong, she whispered again. And maybe she believed that was enough. But something inside me had already shifted. The anger was gone. All that remained was clarity. You shouldn't treat anyone in your own family like that, I said. Not your granddaughter. Not anyone. Dylan stepped forward. So what, you're just cutting us off? Over one night? I looked him in the eye. It wasn't one night, I said. It was every hesitation, every forced hug, every picture you avoided. Christmas was just the moment the mask fell. My mother's face drained of color. I stepped back toward the doorframe. Forget me, I said slowly. Forget Violet. From this moment on, neither of you is my family anymore. Her breath caught sharply. Haley, don't say that. But I already had. And I meant it. I closed the door. Through the wood, I heard my mother sob quietly. I heard Dylan mutter something under his breath. I didn't move. After a few seconds, I turned around. Violet sat on the couch in the living room, coloring quietly in a book her grandmother had given her. She looked up and smiled. She had no idea a door had just closed forever, and I intended to keep it that way. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone at the dining table. The house was quiet. I thought about the last 2 years, about Daniel, about guilt, about my mother's face under Christmas lights. And I realized something simple. I didn't want to keep fighting for a place that never felt safe. I wanted peace. And peace doesn't grow in soil poisoned by shame. So I made a decision. We were leaving. A month later, I stood in the driveway of the house Daniel and I once called home. Cardboard boxes were stacked in the moving truck. The air smelled like cold metal and finality. I held Daniel's old jacket in my hands for a long time before placing it in the last box. It still carried the faintest trace of his cologne. For a second, I pressed my face into the fabric and closed my eyes. I'm doing this for her, I whispered, and maybe, in some quiet place beyond my understanding, he heard me. Selling the house wasn't impulsive. It was necessary. Every street in this neighborhood carried memories, some beautiful, some unbearable. And after Christmas, something inside me had shifted permanently. I didn't want Violet growing up within driving distance of rejection. I didn't want her wondering if Grandma would show up to a school play. I didn't want surprise encounters in grocery store aisles. So I chose distance. 2 hours away, a small town, a fresh start. I changed my phone number. I didn't need late-night calls filled with "we're still family" or empty apologies wrapped in pride. Blood had proven unreliable. Love had not. Violet sat in the back seat as we pulled away for the last time. She watched the old neighborhood shrink in the rearview mirror. "Mommy," she asked, voice bright with curiosity instead of sadness, "will there be a park near the new house?" I smiled at her reflection. Of course, and maybe a lake too. Her eyes widened. Really? Really? She leaned back in her seat, satisfied. That's the thing about children. They don't cling to places. They cling to people. And as long as she had me, she felt safe. As the highway opened in front of us, something lifted from my chest. For 2 years, I had been carrying grief. For months, I had been carrying anger. Now, for the first time, I felt something else. Relief. Not because I stopped loving my mother, but because I stopped needing her to love us correctly. The new house wasn't grand. It was smaller, quieter, surrounded by trees instead of polished lawns. But the first night we slept there, Violet came into my room and climbed into bed beside me. "It feels different," she whispered. "Different good?" I asked. She nodded. "Different safe." That was enough. Daniel's parents visit every weekend. They bring homemade soup, fresh bread, too many desserts. They sit with Violet at the kitchen table, helping with homework, listening to her stories about school. My mother-in-law still kisses her cheek without hesitation. My father-in-law still calls her my brave girl. They don't see scars. They see survival. They see Daniel in her smile. They see love. And so do I. Sometimes when I watch Violet run through the backyard, hair flying in the wind, laughing freely, I realize something I didn't understand before. Scars are proof of life. They are not something to erase. They are something to honor. I don't know if my mother regrets what she did. I don't know if Dylan ever thinks about the look on Violet's face that night. What I do know is this. Family isn't who shares your last name. Family is who stands in front of you when the world points fingers. Family is who chooses you. And when someone chooses not to, you're allowed to walk away. Now, as I sit here telling our story, Violet is curled up on the couch beside her grandparents, safe, warm, laughing at something her grandfather just whispered to her. There are no cold stares, no whispered judgments, no conditions, only love. So tell me, was I wrong to cut ties with my mother and my brother? Or was I finally brave enough to protect my daughter the way she deserved?